Hi, welcome to the online syllabus orientation video for this history course. My name is Luke Gunderson. I am the instructor for the course. So I created this video to be a very general walkthrough of what's in the syllabus, explanation of assignments, and whatnot, course policies. I am making this video to be useful for several different colleges and several different courses that I teach because I tend to use very similar assignments in all of my courses. So you'll see a lot of kind of blank spots, like up at the top it says blank college because I teach at several colleges online. So I'm making this to be useful for many different courses at many different colleges. So here we go. The syllabus to start is going to be located in Canvas in the files page. Just in the general files page it'll say syllabus, so that's the link I always use, so it should be there during the entire term of the course and should be always accessible to you. So up at the top of the syllabus is just the name of the college, blank college. Again, I teach at several colleges, so this is just a kind of placeholder name. When you see your syllabus for your college, that name will be filled in. Right below that will be the semester and the year that the course is being offered. And below that is usually a course number. Like for some colleges, Ancient World Civilizations is History 101. And then it will have the catalog description, which would be Ancient World Civilizations. Different colleges have different numbers for even the same type of course, so it's pretty runs the gamut of all kinds of identifiers according to numbers and official course description names. Below that will be the section number, which is some colleges call it a section number. It's the number that you need to actually register for the course. Some colleges call this a course registration number, or CRN. So I list that number at the top also, and this is going to be an internet course because I, again, primarily teach internet courses these days. I'm also required right below that to list the final exam due date. So I usually write it as, say, Friday, December 9th, and the year, due by 11:59 p.m. on that exact day. The final exam, it will be open during all of finals week for you to take, but you have to take it by the day that and time that is listed here. That is the time that it will officially close. So if you're still taking the test when that time runs out, then the test will close on you and the answers that you have submitted will be recorded, and any answers that you haven't gotten to yet will not be recorded, so they'll be recorded as wrong answers. So that's something to be very aware of. Right below that is I usually have a course link, which these days is a link to the Canvas course, or at least the login page for Canvas. And once you log in, you should be trained to be able to locate your course on the dashboard. There is an assigned textbook for the course. I'll list that here as title and often give the author's name and the publishing company and the year it was published. These days I am using almost entirely zero-cost textbooks, which tend to be fully online textbooks. So I also usually publish an internet link here up at the top where you can usually click on to access the online textbook, and I can almost guarantee that it's going to be free by this point, so you shouldn't have to pay for anything textbook-wise for this course. I also write that the syllabus is amendable, which means changeable by written change, and also notice of such changes accessible through the class website, which is usually the Canvas announcements page. So if I make any changes to the syllabus for any reason, then I will announce it in the announcements page and also update the syllabus file in the files page. That being said, I usually do not make many changes to the syllabus at all. I spend quite a lot of time before the term starts really planning out the assignments to make sure that it's a consistent workload for students throughout the term. So I have put a lot of effort into that kind of pre-planning. So if I have to make any changes to the syllabus, it's usually because I saw some kind of mistake in the syllabus that needed to be changed, like I didn't give enough points to a certain assignment or something like that. It's usually pretty minor stuff. Or unless I get hospitalized or something and I have to delay some due dates or some make an announcement about I have to return some graded work later than usual. But for the vast majority of classes, the syllabus will be pretty much unchanged throughout the entire term. All right. The next section is just some information about me. My name is Luke Gunderson. I've been teaching in the community college system since 2007, so I've been doing this quite a while, and so that is one reason why my syllabus and my assignments tend to be very refined at this point. I usually list the college email address as contact information because every college these days gives us an email address to use, and that is the preferred method of communication for most students. You can also communicate and contact me through the Canvas inbox, which a lot of students also use quite frequently. Some colleges still give us a voicemail account, which is a phone number. So that might be listed if the college you're taking this course at gave me a voicemail box phone number. But if you ever call that phone number, you should never expect me to actually pick up the phone and talk to you. It's a place for students to leave messages, and then I can contact them to respond to their message through the whatever way they told me to contact them in the message that they left. So if you leave a message to such a voicemail, make sure to tell me how to contact you, phone number, email, something, so I know how to get in touch with you. 'Cause if I don't have that, I cannot respond to you. Most colleges these days give us, as part-time instructors, permission to hold official office hours. And for online classes, those office hours are usually held in Zoom or some other online meeting type of platform. The downside with part-time office hours is that most colleges at this point, they don't just kind of allow us to schedule it. It has to get approved. So usually in the first week or so of the semester, we send in a request to our supervisors about what days and times we would like to do office hours, and we have to wait for a response and for it to be approved. So I cannot put office hours into the syllabus for the day one of the course usually. So I usually have a statement written in there that office hours will be officially announced by the end of the fourth week or something like that, because that's when I usually get the approval, and then I can officially write it into the syllabus and hold office hours on those days and times. So that will usually be filled in the first weeks or so of the course. The next section is college course description. That is usually literally taken right out of the college catalog, which has the official name of the course, how many units it is, what the official description of the course is, what in very couple basic sentences what the course covers, any prerequisites that are required for students to take before enrolling in this course. So that is taken from the official college document about the course. Next is usually student learning outcomes. These are things that most students don't usually interact with very much. These are mostly tools for the college and the department, the history department at the college, to analyze whether the students who are completing these classes successfully with a grade of C or higher, that they are learning certain skills or certain theories or understanding certain historical facts. Again, I leave these fairly blank because each department at each different college tends to determine their own learning outcomes. So each college may have vastly different ones. So again, this is just kind of a placeholder kind of statement, but in the syllabus for your course, these blanks will be filled in, sometimes in great detail. Next section of the syllabus is usually to start on talking about the course assignments. So I usually assign 4 modules for online courses. Modules 1, 2, and 3 give the lecture material in chronological, which means timeline order, with an exam at the end of each module. So for instance, Module 1 might have 6 or 8 lectures for you to watch as pre-recorded videos. And when you finish that series of lectures, you will take an exam on those lectures. And then after exam 1 for Module 1, then you will start on Module 2, which will be another series of 6 or 8 lectures or so. And at the end of that module, you will take an exam 2 focused only on the lectures in Module 2. And then you will start on Module 3, which is usually a little bit longer for most of my courses. It usually has about 8 or 10 lectures. At the end of Module 3, you will take the final exam at the end of the term, and the final exam will only cover the lectures from Module 3. So each module also has a study guide, which is really useful for students. That is preloaded into the files page in a folder that literally says exam study guides, and each study guide for each module for each exam will appear in that folder in Canvas in the files page. So students find that very helpful to refer to help them prepare for each exam. The final exam is non-cumulative, which is a kind of fancy way of saying that the final exam will only cover Module 3, the lectures for Module 3. These exams are the primary means of assessing student learning for each module, at least the lectures in Modules 1, 2, and 3. Module 4 is usually a term paper process, and the assignments in Module 4 are mostly dedicated to each step in the research and writing process. So we will see much more of those as we get into the grading scale and the course schedule as we continue on our tour throughout this syllabus. And each Module 4 assignment is explained in the assignments page link on Canvas, and they're going to be all lined up for you by day 1 of the class when you can see everything. For the graded assignments, all the assignments are due on usually weekday nights at just before midnight. I use 11:59 because if I say 12 midnight, then it becomes a question if it's 12 midnight of the night that starts that night, or is it 12 midnight for the following day. So I just use 11:59 p.m. just to be absolutely clear. And I usually set it up for, if it's a full semester class, 16 or 17 week class, your assignments will usually be due almost always on the same one weekday night. So they will always be due on Monday nights or Wednesday nights. For more accelerated classes that are usually only 6 or 8 weeks, because it's only an 8-week course, we have to do all these assignments much quicker to get through it all. So those usually have 2 nights a week where assignments are due. And I try to stagger it the way a normal college class is, where you have Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday due dates. When a holiday falls on one of these nights, sometimes I have to make an exception and have the assignment due like a previous day or the next day or something like that, because the college is officially closed for holidays, so we're not supposed to be collecting work for online classes on holidays. Any assignment that's turned in late or taken after the due date for a test or a quiz will be punished by a 10% point reduction. This should say every week. So I need to update that. For every calendar week it is received late. So if you need to miss a certain day because you have, I don't know, some kind of like doctor's appointment or some kind of personal thing going on, then all you have to do is notify me ahead of time and you can avoid the reduction. So this reduction will happen for people who do not tell me ahead of time, and I'm just getting late stuff from them. Let's see, there is a syllabus quiz on all this stuff that we're talking about in this video that will be due by usually the first week of the class. So it's one of these, it's only 5 questions and it's not that many points. But we do this in order to ensure that you understand the syllabus during the first week of class and that you are actively participating in the class during the first week. So if you do not take the syllabus quiz by the day and time that the quiz will close, then you may be dropped for not attending the class, for not actively participating in the class during the first week. The syllabus quiz will be found in the assignments page, and it's one of the top assignments because it's due first. Let's see. So all students are required to take these 3 in-class examinations. Let's see. Because that teaches you how to adequately kind of prepare for a test, learn lecture material, take notes, and successfully take a test. So that really prepares you for what is often much more stringent examination rules and much harder tests that you will take if you transfer to university. So students are highly advised to actually take these tests. All the tests are in Canvas online, so you won't be physically present in a classroom with everyone else in the class to take the test. And some classes I offer do 4 exams. They're usually 3 though. If you need to take a makeup test because you, for some reason, could not get the test done on time, if you did, I'll grant that if you notify me ahead of time. But if you tell me after the test is already closed, then I have to kind of ask permission, usually from a supervisor, depending on which college we're talking about and what those rules are. So those are the lectures and the tests, the exams. And also, I mean, the lectures and the exams, those are really about half the points in the class, and we'll see that as we get down to the grading scale, how much each assignment is worth. So that's about 1/2 of the class, is just watching the lectures on a weekly basis, submitting your comments, which we'll talk about in a little while, and taking the exams. The other half is really writing a term paper. So I assign a mini research paper at least 4 pages long, and that's double spaced. So that is a minimum length. It is not a maximum, and we will talk in more depth about what happens if you don't submit a full 4 pages all the way to the bottom of the 4th page. That does not include your bibliography, so this is 4 pages of just your writing, your text. So we will work on this project throughout the term, really starting with the first week or 2, when I'm going to ask you to send me to submit a term paper topic idea so that I can respond to your idea and offer you any advice I might have about the topic that you want to cover. And through the following weeks, we will talk about how to analyze research sources, how to get the sources in the first place from the library. And then you're going to submit a list of provisional sources to me to review and kind of ensure that you're finding good stuff. You'll create an outline of your ideas for the essay, and then write a rough draft and review it with a partner in the class. This will all be done virtually online. That's really the other half of the class, and eventually you're going to refine your rough draft and turn in a final draft. So that's about half the points in the class, is this whole process of research and writing and reviewing and submitting the final draft. So we'll talk about that a little more in depth as we get into the list of actual assignments. Let's see. And during the semester, you are going to be asked to submit at least one kind of mini essay that's usually about 2 pages or so long, double-spaced. And this is, I call it a reading response because it's a response to a reading assignment. There is a folder in the Files page on Canvas called Reading Response Options. And there is also a document either in that folder or just in the Files page called Lectures and Readings, which shows these reading response options. Each one is only about 6 or so pages long. So it should take about a half hour to read it, but they are directly connected to a certain lecture. So this list, called the lectures and reading document, tells you which readings in the folder, the reading response options or folder, is directly connected to which lecture. So just in case you were, especially interested in a certain lecture, you can look in this lectures and readings document to figure out which of the readings in the reading response options folder you might be interested in reading for this mini essay. So the basic process is you pick which reading you want to do, you read it, maybe take some notes on it, and you will write a short essay answering these 3 questions. So most students tend to write about 1 paragraph to answer each question. First question is, what's the big question or criticism that the writer talks about? Basically, what is this thing that you read about? What's its main point? So write a paragraph talking about what is the main point, well, why do you think it's important, and pull a quote from the reading to prove your answer. Let's see, question number 2. How does this reading connect to the module that the class is currently studying? So this is asking you to directly connect this stuff that was written in the time that we're talking about to that era, usually by connecting it to some of the ideas in the lecture videos. And again, for question number 2, you will write basically a short paragraph to answer this question, and also pull a quote from the reading to prove the accuracy of what you're talking about to answer question number 2. Question number 3, do we still see this kind of problem going on today in our modern society? So the answer for number 3 cannot just be yes or no. You have to explain your answer, and the best way to explain it is to bring up and discuss some clear examples of what you see going on today. So your answer is not just, yes, this is still happening today. Tell me how. What do you see going on in, I don't know, what you read about politics, or what's going on in the country or in the world today that reminds you of these problems that you read about in this reading? Or it doesn't have to be so much politics or economics or like those big world events. It can also be something in pop culture, something that's going on in society. Like it could be really anything, as long as it's fairly recent to the time that you're taking this class. So anything that's been going on over the past, I don't know, 3, maybe 5 years, you can cite that as examples. And that's going to be your proof. Those examples that you cite from our modern time will be your proof in answering this question number 3. So again, response length a really good one usually goes from at least 1 full page, double spaced, to maybe 2 pages. Some people get really into it and they write about 3 pages or so. But 1 to 2 pages double spaced is a good amount to answer these 3 questions with the quotes. So these reading responses are usually due on the day of either exam 1 or exam 2. And these are usually from my early U.S. history classes. So you'll get a certain amount of points for each of the questions. And depending on which class you're taking, I have to kind of adapt the point totals depending on different assignments, how many assignments I'm giving to each class. So it'll usually be something like each question is worth like 10 points or 20 points or something like that. And you will get another equal amount of points for using quotes from the source to prove your ideas, especially for answering questions number 1 and 2. So the reading response as total is usually worth like 40 points or maybe 80 points, with each question being worth 10 or 20, plus another 10 or 20 points for using quotes. And again, they are usually due on the day of exam 1 or exam 2. For students that are enrolled in ancient history courses, they don't do reading responses so much because I found that a lot of ancient readings are really hard to decipher and understand because they were written so long ago. So instead of that, I usually assign a film analysis, which is, like this says, it is something that you should do. First step is to pick a theatrical film, like a Hollywood film that's come out somewhat recently, usually in the last 30 years or so. So a lot of students do like the movie 300 or Gladiator or something like that. And what they do is watch the film and then write a short essay, again usually a page or two double space, to analyze the film's historical accuracy. So your essay is going to do several things. Number one, it's going to show that you actually watched a film. So that's like just standard. So you get a few points for doing that, for just having shown that you actually watched something. But the real bulk of the points is that you should argue one way or the other. Is the film's portrayal accurate according to what historians think? So you're not just going to watch a movie and say, yes, it was accurate. How are you going to know if it's accurate? At that point, you have to research historical sources. Maybe the textbook or a scholarly article through the library, or maybe just a website written by a good historian that talks about this film and what is accurate or not accurate about it. So that's where you're going to learn about the accuracy. So you will be responsible while you write this essay to have an argument about accuracy, about certain facets of the film, like the battle scene was accurate, or the costumes were not accurate, or the character's existence may not have actually happened. It might just be a totally fictional character, or the places that they interacted at, or the decisions they made, or just anything that you want to talk about, that you have evidence for. So as long as you have arguments for accuracy or inaccuracy, and then you just don't say it's inaccurate or if it's accurate, you actually use evidence to support your claim. So I usually post a really good film analysis that a student wrote a few years ago into the files page, and it'll be called something like Film Analysis Example. And you can read through and from there see, like, I kind of highlighted where their argument was, and I highlight usually highlight like where their good quote was, and I'll write a comment that says really good quote for proving that argument. A lot of students run into problems because they like to say a lot of things, they like to make arguments, but sometimes their arguments don't have any evidence attached to it. And when I see that, I'll highlight their argument and say, where's the proof for this idea? So that's training students to make sure that they have evidence to back up their claims, that they're not just kind of throwing ideas out there. So again, usually I'll post an example of a very strong film analysis in the files page, and the film analysis is usually worth about 50, maybe 80 points, and it's usually like 10 points just for showing that you watched a movie, that's much is obvious, and another 20 points for having arguments about accuracy, or inaccuracy in certain areas of the film. And the rest of the points, the other 20 or 30 points, will come from the fact that you used quotes, evidence, to prove all of your historical arguments. But for some people, say if they have like 4 arguments but only 2 of them have evidence, then they only get half the amount of points for the evidence section. Let's see, but the film analysis is only for the ancient World Civ and ancient Western Civ classes. The reading response is usually assigned to the early U.S. history courses. All right. So those are like little mini essays that'll be due, and again, almost always on the day of exam 1 or exam 2 when that is due. So I really use those 2 mini essays as kind of like take-home essays instead of a blue book type of essay response for the test. The exams themselves will be just multiple choice. So these kind of shorter essays are like the essay portion of a test, basically. All right, so going back to the lectures, you're also required to send in your thoughts about the lectures. So I call these lecture questions, and these are my attempt to give you an open forum to ask questions about the lecture material. Did you find anything confusing? You can write that in. And they'll all be posted into Canvas in the discussion boards. So I create a discussion board for each lecture where you will access the lecture video through the discussion board, and I heavily encourage people to take notes on these lecture videos just like you would any other lecture in in-person class that you take. So these lecture videos you'll see are the size of a normal lecture. The audio was recorded almost always in an actual class where I gave the lecture to. So like you'll hear students moving around, you will hear them asking questions during the lecture. You'll hear the door close when like someone goes to the bathroom or something like that. So you'll hear all that stuff in the audio. And all I did was take the audio that I recorded those days from those in-person lectures, and I matched it to the PowerPoint slides that I use. So you are, through these lecture videos, are literally getting the exact same lecture that was given to an in-person class. So that gives the entire course a very in-person type of feel. And I also take lecture questions from my in-person classes, but it's much easier to do just here in Canvas because you will be able to, maybe I can pull up an example. You can go to a lecture right here. So this is a discussion board, and when you pull up the lecture link, you have 2 choices. You can watch the lecture with captions or without captions. It's really whichever you prefer. And down below that will be a little reply button that you'll click on. And that's where you will be able to write your lecture questions. And you see that once you hit submit, they get posted into the discussion board. And usually a couple days later or so, I will go in and respond to a whole lot of them, really as many as I can. And that's how you're getting points for these lecture critiques. There we go. So you will get these lecture questions. You're getting points for responding to these lectures. So your questions, your response length can go from like 2 short sentences to about a paragraph, but it's not meant to be an essay. So just keep it under 100 words. So it's usually only a couple questions or so, or a couple statements, or whatever you really want to say about the lecture. So you get basically 5 points for responding to a lecture, and then you will get another 5 points for responding to at least one other student's post for that lecture. And that's how you'll get full credit for responding to that lecture. You basically get half credit for writing your own response, and then another half credit for replying to another student's post in that same lecture, in that same discussion board. So overall, it's worth 10 points per lecture. And not all students choose to respond to a post in that particular lecture. So when you look in your grades page, you might see some 5-point results. These are graded on a credit or no credit basis. So it's not like I'm going to grade them as like, well, one person had a really good lecture question, so they get 5 points, and this other person had like a really weak question, so they only get 1 point. No, it's full points or no points. You either do it or you don't. And students must receive credit, full credit for at least 10 lectures throughout the semester to get the full 100 points for the course grade for lecture questions. This is where it gets a little bit confusing. Because I am recording not just your questions itself for the lecture, but also your posts or your replies to other students' posts in the same lectures. I try to make it somewhat simplified with points. There are usually more than 20 lecture videos planned throughout the term, but you only need to respond to 10 of them fully to get the full points for this part of the course grade. So you don't have to reply to every single one of them. And if you go beyond 10, you will not get more points. You'll max out at the full 100 points for the course, and if you keep responding to more lectures, then you're not going to get more points. You've kind of maxed out your percentage. And I'll show you how I keep track of this. Let's see, I'll go to one of these courses without any names in it, hopefully yet. And let's see. Nah, there's already names in it. But this is point totals, and you'll see for each assignment. For the lectures, you'll see that they are listed as out of 0 points. So I physically cannot put any points in to this because it's out of 0. So what I do instead on a weekly basis, if you responded fully to the very first lecture, I go over to this thing called Module 1 Lecture Questions Total. And it's out of 30 because you can respond to 3 lectures to get the full points. So if you posted your questions about the lecture, then you get 5 points. And that's your total so far. If you also reply to someone else's post for that first lecture, I'll change it to 10. So you got the full 10. And then for the next lecture video, if you only post your own question, that'll push you up to 15. So you have 10 from the previous week and 5 for the one that you just did. And if you also respond to another student's post in the second lecture, then you'll get 20. The full 10 for the first lecture and the full 10 for the second lecture. So you can see there's more. I think for this class there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lectures for Module 1. But you only really have to fully respond to 3 of them to get the full 30 points possible for Module 1 lecture critiques. And if you got like 15 out of the possible 20 for the first 2 lecture videos, that also means that you can do an extra respond to another one of the later lecture videos to get that extra 5 points that you missed when you did not respond to someone's post, like in one of the first 2 that were assigned. So by the time exam 1 rolls around, your goal is to have 30 points in the Module 1 lecture questions total. So again, you'll see these little icons pop up that you posted responses in the lectures themselves in your grades page, but they're out of 0 points. So your points are going to accumulate in the Module 1 lecture questions total. And the same is true of Module 2, which will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lectures for this course. So they will still be out of 30, so they have 8 lectures to respond to, but they only need to fully respond to 3 of them. And for the last module, this one in this course, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That has 10 lectures total, and they have to respond to 4 out of 10. So it's a little confusing how the points accumulate, but once you kind of go through Module 1, you'll get the hang of it. It's just a little kind of confusing to explain. Once you get the experience of it week by week, it makes a lot more sense. And that's where I write Modules 1, 2, and 3. You have to respond to at least 3 or 4 lectures, depending on which module you're talking about. And 10 total lectures for the entire term. And since there are usually more than 20 lecture videos planned for the full term, that gives you quite a lot of leeway in missing your lecture questions every once in a while. Let's see. And again, the lecture questions that you post and my answers and the discussions amongst other students will be posted in the discussions page. It's really important to note that you need to respond to the first couple of lecture videos, usually the first week or two of the course, because that again is evidence that you're participating in the course, and if you do not respond to those two, then you might be dropped again for non-attendance in the first few weeks of the class. Basically, you were enrolled in the class, but if you didn't respond to these lectures, then you didn't actively participate, and state law says that we are required to drop students from the class if they're not participating, because the state does not want to pay the college for students that are not actively involved in running and working with the class. So they usually get dropped the first, 3 weeks or so of the term. This should say 11:59, so I'll just go ahead and change that now. The lecture questions are almost always due at 11:59 on the kind of date listed in the schedule. So it's usually a Monday or a Wednesday or something like that, and we've already talked about that. Furthermore, in the kind of graded assignments part, any written assignments should be written up in a PDF or a Microsoft Word document, just because those are just the easiest to grade and re-upload through the assignments page. Once you submit them, I usually try to grade the stuff the next day, or at least by the end of that week. So I download them from the assignments page, I grade them with comments, and upload points into your grades page, and then I re-upload the saved graded version of the assignment, so you will get something back from Canvas with my comments in it about why you got that particular amount of points for the assignment. So yeah, they'll be re-uploaded through the assignments link, and you should get a notification that there's something for you to review about how your work was graded. Let's see. And you're heavily encouraged to actually kind of keep up and review your grades page for the course on a weekly basis to verify that your grades are being accurately recorded. Because I teach a lot of classes, and online it sometimes just gets confusing, and if you have a question about your grade, you want to contact me as quickly as possible. There will be an extra credit assignment offered at the end of the course, but only to students that have turned in all the other assignments for the course, excluding the lecture questions, because you only have to do half of those. So all the other kind of written assignments you have to have turned in to even be eligible for extra credit. And extra credit is usually due on when the final exam ends, when it closes. So if you have questions about that, you can contact me. Let's see. And my feedback policy is I will return consistent feedback on pretty much all of the assignments, especially on the reading responses and other kind of critical thinking based assignments. And I usually try to get those things graded within a couple of days of when you submit them, when they were due. But sometimes holidays or like emergencies might intervene. So I might get to it a little later, but I'm usually pretty good at, as long as the semester is just kind of going by on a daily basis pretty consistently for me, I can get to them pretty quick. That sends us to the grading scale. So this is a list of all the assignments for the class, and it's quite a lot. And it's mostly because I give so many of these assignments that have to do with the term paper. So the kind of video lecture process, the big source of points for that is the lecture questions. So they're written into this syllabus in a reddish type of color, and they will also appear in the schedule page below in that reddish kind of color. Let's see. Usually, that's not. Well, if we're in an asynchronous class, this is usually just a term paper process. So those are usually listed in this kind of brownish color in the syllabus, and you see that's most of these assignments. They're usually not worth very much individually, but they do add up over time. So the first thing you're going to do in the first couple weeks is choose a research topic and submit your idea in a sentence or two, and I'll respond to that, and you'll get 20 points for doing that. We'll also do a library research orientation. Some colleges do that live through Zoom. So if your college does that, it'll be scheduled somewhere down in the schedule page about when exactly that's going to happen. And there will be a Zoom link because they almost always do it through Zoom these days or some other meeting platform. Some colleges just have some easy assignments for students to log into the library system and download some assignments and fill them out. So it really depends on which college is using which system for you to get those full orientation points for the library. After that, there's going to be a thing called Analyzing the Research Source. And that's really a worksheet that's going to be in the assignments page for you to download. And it's going to ask you to locate a research source for your term paper project and to read it and take notes and answer basically 2 pages of questions about the source. First is like, what's the general bibliographic information, like who wrote it and whatnot. What's the title, all that type of stuff. And then it'll ask you some pretty detailed historical questions like, how does this compare to what you learned about this topic in the textbook? What kind of evidence does the writer use? Is it like different from what other historians think about the topic? So it's really a worksheet to fill out in answering those questions. And you'll do that 3 times for 3 different sources. And that's to get you used to how to analyze research sources, because you want to analyze them. You don't just want to read them and take what they say just by default as truth. So it's thinking deeper about the sources. There's also a thing called essay formatting worksheet. So there's going to be another tutorial video that you're going to watch on how to do this research and how to write an essay and how to write a rough draft and how to write body paragraphs and that type of stuff. And as you watch that video, you will fill out this essay formatting worksheet and submit that with points, probably around the middle of the semester. Once you're kind of wrapping up your research, I'm going to ask you to send me a list of sources, like your provisional source list. You're like basically a provisional bibliography for your term paper. So I want to review it, make sure that you're finding and relying on accurate sources or reliable sources. And as you start working on a rough draft, there's a short thing on passive language that a lot of students kind of struggle with. So there's a little exercise on that. And you're going to plan out your rough draft in an outline, and all these will be explained in the assignments pages, and especially in the essay formatting video and worksheet that you're going to watch later on in the course. Once you write a rough draft, you're going to review it with a partner. You're going to exchange rough drafts and read each other's work and answer another worksheet list of questions that I have for you. That's getting toward the end of the term. And then toward the end, you're going to turn in your final draft. So in most of my classes, I have students turn in their final draft through a Turnitin portal, which will study your work for possible to see if it's plagiarized from the internet or not. So you'll get 10 points just for sending it through Turnitin. Some colleges don't have access to Turnitin, so that might not be in your assignments page or your syllabus. But also make sure that you turn in your final draft into the final draft link, that assignment, because that's the mass amount of points. So the final draft of the term paper is almost always the biggest assignment for any of my classes. It's worth 200 points. And that's because we spend so much time and so much effort in all these other assignments kind of preparing you to submit that final draft. So that's like the cumulative research project that you work on throughout the semester. And then there's a reading response or a film analysis. That's usually worth 40 or 80 points. We've already talked about that. We've talked about the lecture questions. And there's a syllabus quiz that you take the first week or so. So my classes, I always have them add up to 1,000 points possible. And I do that because that makes the math very easy on me in assigning points and grades to students. So most colleges use a term paper grading scale where it's just a flat grade. There's no pluses or minuses. So for those colleges, 90 to 100% is that's an A in the class, and 80 to 89.9 is a B. Some colleges have the plus and minus scale, so in the syllabus for those courses you'll see that much more detailed laid out. But this is where I tell you how many points you need to get what grade. And the course schedule is really just a weekly schedule of what you're doing on a weekly basis. So usually for a full semester class that's 16 or 17 weeks long, you're going to watch 2 lecture videos per week generally that will be due on the day listed. So it'll give you the date that the thing is due, usually by not so much 10 p.m., but usually by 11:59 p.m. Change that again. For the first week you usually have like the syllabus quiz and maybe a lecture or two, but after that it's usually 2 lectures per week. So your lecture questions are due at the end of that week. You are able to watch the lectures all the way through the day that the exam is due for those lectures. And again, that's supposed to be 11 p.m. Reading response or film analysis usually due by 11:59 p.m. to finish off the module. And then you're on to the next module, which you see is usually 2 lectures per week. The textbook reading assignments are also due by the day that you're supposed to have watched that lecture by. So those are usually listed in a different color, and they're usually listed right below the lecture that they're attached to. So what you're generally going to experience in this course is on a weekly basis, you're going to be watching lecture videos, submitting your lecture questions, and at the end of the module take an exam and maybe write a reading response or a film analysis. And then you get down into the last module, and I usually tell you what the last day to drop the class is in the syllabus, and you're usually again doing a lecture or 2 per week until you get to the final exam. And there's usually a module 4 at the bottom that lists all those term paper pieces that are due one after another on specific days throughout the semester. Some colleges want me to put those due dates into the 3 modules so that students can see that it's due on certain days. So you might get those brown term paper process assignment due dates popping up in the module parts, the first 3 modules in the syllabus. That really depends on the college policies. And the last part is really course policies. For most of the colleges, it's usually pretty consistent for my classes. You're expected to keep up with all the modules throughout the course, and you're responsible for all the information given in each module. So you're responsible to kind of follow along, take notes, especially for those lecture videos. Take detailed notes because that's the information you're going to be tested on in the exams. If you want to drop the class, especially after the first couple weeks, you are responsible for dropping the class yourself. Never assume that I might have dropped you. If you want to be dropped, drop yourself, and then make sure to kind of keep your confirmation number of that drop. The college will usually consider any kind of plagiarism, any copying of work from another source or a chat bot or something like that to be academic dishonesty. And if I suspect any of that going on in your written work, I am almost always required to fill out a form and report that usually to my supervisor, who is usually a dean at the college. So you'll want to see the college policy on academic dishonesty for more information. And I am not hesitant to report suspected plagiarism to a dean. And the college policy is usually that the dean will review what I sent to them and decide if you're guilty or innocent of plagiarism, and if you're guilty, what the punishment should be. The term paper does have a rubric that is laid out in the assignment page. And maybe I could show that to you real quick before we finish this up. Let's see, assignments. And and it's usually toward the bottom, so I just usually skip down toward the end. Term paper final draft should have a rubric on it where I show you exactly how I'm going to grade the thing. And of course, it's not there for this one, for this class yet. And look in, well, I might have put it in the files page. So there should be a term paper documents folder in the files page and in your files page, and it might be in there. Yeah, grading rubric. So real quick, I can show you how the thing's going to be graded. It's worth 200 points if this ever comes up. The 200 points is, if you look at like percentage-wise, if you get an A on it, 90% or above, that's 180 to 200 points. A B is 160, 179, and so on. And I kind of break it up into several different pieces. Just the general length. If your essay goes, your actual writing itself, not including the bibliography, if it gets into the 4th page, you'll usually get 40 points or above. There's 50 points total possible for length. So if you get it all the way to the bottom, at least, of the 4th page, you'll get the full 50 points. But if you get onto the 4th page, but you don't get to the bottom, depends on if it's like, is it 3.5 pages, so you might get 45 points for that, or 44 points. It really depends on where your length ended up. If it gets onto the 3rd page, you'll probably land somewhere between 25 and 39 points. So if you write basically 3 whole pages, you'll probably get about 38 or 39 points. If you only get onto the 2nd page, the most you could get is 24 points out of 50. So if you write 2 pages out of the 4 required, you'll basically get half the amount of points. So the less you write for your final draft, the less points that are possible for that. So if you just write the minimum 4 pages, you get 50 points right there. Research quality. After reviewing your annotated sources, your research should be pretty good at that point. And one of the first things I do for your term paper is immediately skip to the end and look at your bibliography and verify there's at least 5 reliable academic sources there. If there's 5 of them, then you get the 50 points. If there's less than 5, or if you have 5 but a couple of them aren't really scholarly, it seems like they're websites or something that's not really a scholarly publisher, then you'll probably get less points. And if there's like only a couple of sources and they seem very questionable, then you'll get even less points. So again, if you write just 4 pages of text, you get 50 points. If you have the 5 required at least reliable, scholarly kind of academic sources, you get 50 points. That goes a long way toward getting a good grade on this thing. So half the points for the term paper are literally just, did you write enough and did you do good enough research? The rest of it is really for your writing style and fulfilling the basic pieces of an essay, a research essay. So there's 5 pieces in here, so these are 20 points total. First is a thesis, and the video that will train you on how to write essays will talk about the thesis in depth. So you will know how to write a good thesis by the end of that. So as long as there's a thesis in there, it's clear, and that the body paragraphs actually follow that plan, you'll get the 20 points. If the thesis is mostly clear, but the paragraphs don't really follow it, then you'll get less points. If the thesis is really hard to find and it's confusing and the paragraphs don't really do much with it or don't really follow it at all, you'll get less points. Another one is the body paragraph structure. So all body paragraphs should include an introductory statement, then proof, evidence for your claim, and then explanation of how that evidence proves the statement. And again, the training video on writing essays will talk at length about that process. So as long as all your body paragraphs have those 3 pieces in that order, you'll get the full 20 points. If most paragraphs have it, but one of them is kind of messed up and is missing some pieces, you'll get less points. If most of your body paragraphs have problems and are missing some pieces, then you get even less points. Each body paragraph needs to have evidence. So if all your body paragraphs have at least one quote or a statistic or something, you'll get the full points. If evidence is missing from a paragraph, you'll get less points. If evidence is missing from several paragraphs, you'll get less points. And most essays that are 4 pages long, they usually have 3, maybe 4 body paragraphs. Or if all of your evidence is cited throughout the entire essay, you'll get the full 20 points. If some is missing, you'll get less points. If a lot is missing, you'll get much less points. And then there's general grammar, and this is the one where most students kind of struggle with because they're still learning to write essays. So I understand that there's going to be some grammar errors in any final draft, but if there's very few of them, if it's fairly rare in your essay, then you'll get a lot of the points, 18 or 20. If there's a consistent amount of grammar or punctuation errors, you'll probably land around, I don't know, 14 or 15 points. If there's a whole bunch of them and they're very consistent sentence after sentence, this is where most students will land, usually in the 10 or 12 point realm for grammar. And if the thing is just has so many grammar errors that it's just really hard to read, if it's virtually every single sentence, then you'll get less than 10 points for it. So what you'll see at the end of your term paper is, number one, as I read it, I leave extensive comments, and you will see that when you get the graded version back. And somewhere at the end, I will give a breakdown of how many points you got for all 7 of these sections. Length, research, thesis, paragraphs, evidence, citations, and grammar. And your grade on the thing just ends up being whatever your point totals were for each section. So I just go by the numbers. And that's how I'm going to grade your final draft. And that's pretty much the end of the syllabus. Some colleges require me to put in much more information about how students can contact counselors or librarians or success centers or something like that. So that you might find that at the end of your particular syllabus for your term. But I think that's the last thing I had to talk about in our kind of template. Yep. So this was a fairly long explanation of the syllabus and assignments, and I do this for all my in-person classes also. So I just like to make this accessible for students to see and refer back to during the semester. So it will always be here in the Canvas course, usually at the top of the assignments page. If I can bring that up again real quick. There we go. Get out of this. And if you just go to the assignments page, it's listed as a video to watch. There's no points assigned to this. You don't have to write any questions because it's in one of these optional videos for you to watch as an introduction to the class. So it's going to be here. You can watch it as many times as you want, and it'll stay there throughout the entire term for you to refer to.